Well, it's cold outside, but that's because it's winter, and it's also a great time in the winter garden to kind of assess your landscape and ground covers and how they're used in your landscape in particular. And that's what I'm doing today. I thought I would share with you 5 of my favorite ground covers, which ones I really like, which ones I have kind of cast aside because they didn't work so well for me, and maybe some ground cover alternatives. So let's get started with number 1, a plant in my garden that you guys frequently ask about, and this is Mondo Grass. In contrast to monkey grass, that's Liriope, Mondo Grass is a cushiony ground cover. It grows very short. It really likes good drainage. It's hardy down to about -10 degrees, and if you don't have a hard winter, then it will stay pretty much evergreen through the season, and it looks really beautiful right now, I think. Now, one of the downsides to Mondo Grass, as attractive as it is as a ground cover, is that it can be kind of expensive. So if you're able to share some of that or get someone to share it from their landscape with you, that is great. I also have found that a way to kind of mitigate that expense a little bit is to tuck it around flagstones. That serves kind of a dual purpose. You don't have to have as large a quantity of it, and you're also not stepping on it. So these pavers that go into my potager make wonderful little stepping stones, and I also love the way this cushiony Mondo Grass kind of frames each stepping stone. Now it comes in, this variety is dwarf Mondo Grass. There's a variety that's a little bit taller. It also comes in black. There's a black Mondo Grass that's beautiful, by the way, in container arrangements. And I've even seen Mondo Grass used as a house plant because it really is pretty easy. It doesn't require a ton of light, and it's I think it's just maybe something that you might want to try as an option. I myself am going to try it. I'm sorry, it's cold out and I'm having trouble getting my mouth to work. I'm going to try it as a house plant myself. Now, one other thing about Mondo Grass is that it will tell you, if you look at different kinds of literature or websites, it will tell you that it can handle full sun to part shade, but I have found definitely in the South, where it's a popular ground cover, that it really wants afternoon shade. Otherwise, in the dead of summer in July and August, this will turn kind of brown. It's like it goes dormant or something. The areas that are in part shade where I've got it planted, they can really handle the heat and the strong sun a lot better. But does it always bounce back? Absolutely. It's really tough, and it would be number 1 on my list of ground covers. Now let's move on to another area of my garden. Now on to number 2, which is Ajuga. But before I talk about bugleweed or Ajuga, I want to talk a little bit about my garden bench that was damaged in the ice storm. I told you that this armrest on the right-hand side had pretty much been demolished. I did, however, save the bits and pieces of it, and a number of you said, well, I could do a template and I could then have it repaired. And yes, because I don't like to throw things away that still have value, definitely I will have it repaired. But I also know that sometimes things get pushed down on my list of priorities, and I may not make it around to this for a while. So it will easily be obscured by this hydrangea if I'm not as quick on the mark as I should be about getting it repaired before spring. So thank you for all of you guys that reminded me that I could get it repaired by a woodworker and a template. Okay, so back to ground cover. I love Ajuga. It turns this gorgeous, gorgeous purple in the winter time. Now, it can come in different colors. This is just the classic form of bugleweed that will put out a dainty, lovely little spire of a blue flower in spring. It looks especially beautiful at that time, I think, with golden feverfew or anything else that's golden and low growing. But I like it because it will grow in areas where grass doesn't want to grow. So if you have spaces where lawn just doesn't want to get established, then you might consider growing Ajuga. Now, Ajuga can be a little bit finicky, I've found. I'll have it in some areas and it will be there for years and it will be just fine. And then there might be a particularly cold, wet winter or a hot summer and it will kind of fade out, though it never seems to fade out completely. So what I do then is I just allow it to scamper and grow wherever it will. It transplants very easily, so I can move it around if one area does get to be a little bit too sparse. But it's a great alternative where you can't grow grass and in an area that's got good drainage and really doesn't stay too wet or too dry. Now, it has a reputation of really liking to grow in the shade, and it will grow in the shade, but anecdotally I have found that it does pretty well in lots of sun too. So I definitely think you should try one of the different varieties. There's a variegated kind of a cream and green color that is beautiful, but I found it's not nearly as vigorous as just this standard common type. There's also one with a slimmer, more strap-like leaf that's called chocolate chip. It also is beautiful and does pretty well, but when I want just a really great performer with good vigor, then I always just go to the standard Ajuga. Now, you may also find that if you get one of those varieties, it will ultimately revert back to the standard Ajuga anyway. It's a great plant to ask for a start of from your friends that already have it growing in their landscape. So again, it transplants easily, it's not too demanding, and it's really beautiful. And like the Mondo grass, I think it looks great when it starts to kind of creep over a hardscaping, or in this case, a soft hardscape of gravel and brick, which is my number 3 favorite ground cover. This entire area used to be nothing but vinca minor and some golden moneywort. And there would be times when it would be very vigorous, it would be dense, and it made a beautiful tapestry, a lovely montage with stepping stones in it that walked up to the garden bench. But I found that over time it just didn't persist. It wasn't reliable. And so in an aha moment, I just decided that I would do a combination of herringbone, brick, and gravel here. I didn't have to worry then about maintaining anything. I didn't have to water it. And more importantly, it didn't kind of come and go unreliably. Plus, I found that this solution was just far more beautiful. What I also like about it is little things that will come up and go to seed in the gravel. So I've got lots of larkspur that's gone to seed. It will bloom in the spring, and when it's done, I just pull it out. Now you say, well, what about weeds? And as you can see here, I've got a little bit of poana that's coming up through here. I also have some Mazus reptans that's gotten a little bit too vigorous in here. And all I have to do with that, clover sometimes is a problem. All I do with that is just pour boiling water on it, and it just goes away. And in the wintertime, it's a great chore to tackle. Come out here with a hot tea kettle, pour it on any little weeds that are coming up through the brick. Now you may ask me, is this on a bed of does it have a weed barrier? What is the underskirting to all of this? Nothing. It is just very flat dirt that I made sure was extremely level, and then this brick and the stones were just set into that so that they would be level and on grade with the turf. After that, all we did was sprinkle gravel into them. They're not concreted in. That way, if any of them become disrupted, I can easily fix it myself. It was, I think, an afternoon of work. This area I did myself, but there have been other areas in the landscape that someone else did for me. So it is an inexpensive job to do. You can get the brick at Lowe's. You can get pieces of flagstone also at a home improvement store. So it's a quick and easy solution. Another advantage is it makes a wonderful ground cover or a wonderful path, and a great solution if you've got a muddy area that leads up to your faucet or any area that really retains water. So this is a brilliant solution. So that is my number 2 Ajuga, and my number 3, a combination of stone, brick, and gravel. Now let's go to number 4. Now, number 4 is actually a broad category, and that is using herbs as ground cover. I love to use herbs, and in particular 2. I love various forms of thyme, creeping thyme, woolly thyme, any kind of thyme. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I love its scent. It attracts pollinators, and it's especially good in gardens that have more of a Mediterranean vibe and are a little bit drier and more arid. So if you're in California, it would be perfect for you. I also love using oregano as a ground cover. And for many, many years, right in front of the studio, I had a huge patch of golden oregano that very much looked like golden moneywort. It's a great doppelganger for that. But I think very much prettier and a little bit more unusual. It also tended to grow in a more clump-like fashion rather than in putting out tendrils. So in terms of it being a ground cover, I find it a little bit superior to golden moneywort, which I do like to use in hanging baskets, by the way. Now, I don't have any to show you right now because after about 15 years, it died out. I do have a little bit of just regular culinary oregano here, which also makes a good ground cover, and it also makes a great container plant. Now, I'm going to get more of it, and where will I get it? Well, I'm going to check at some of my better local independent nurseries here to see if they have it, but I'm also going to put a link below to a place called Mountain Valley. I believe it's out of California. I've checked out their website. They have it for sale in addition to lots of other herbs that they grow organically, because I just love the fragrance that they impart. I love the fact that they just kind of channel that edible landscape vibe that I love so much, and they're just beautiful. So as a broad category, look into different kinds of low-growing herbs in your landscape. One thing, if you find that they kind of come and go, as thyme does in my garden, then you want to make sure it gets really, really good drainage. Add lots of grit to the soil to amend it before you plant it. But then, like I did with the Mondo Grass, just plant it in between stepping stones, which will always look good in case your creeping thyme kind of doesn't always look its best. So there you go. Those are creeping herbs to use as ground cover. Now let's go to the front yard and I'll show you another one. Now I guess it would just really be an omission not to mention just regular old monkey grass when I'm talking about ground covers. And why I can't say it's necessarily one of my favorite, it is invaluable, I think, in growing in areas where you just absolutely can't get anything else to grow. And in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be cutting this back because it's going to start putting out new tufts of growth, and when I weed eat it back, I don't want to weed eat that fresh growth that's coming through. So if you need a cheap, very effective ground cover for a problem space, though it's not one of my favorite, you definitely can use monkey grass. So now let's come around here. Now remember, this would be my last and my favorite ground cover, and I discovered this through much trial and error. Now some of you may say, oh, there's so many other ground covers that are great. Why isn't she mentioning Pachysandra, and why isn't she mentioning this and moneywort and that? Well, it's because I garden in Oklahoma, and some of those things, they may be great where you garden, but they, for one reason or another, are kind of problematic for me. And I have found some of that out, again, just through experience in my own garden. By all means, if you have a ground cover that works for you, it's beautiful and it's effective, then by all means put it on your favorite list. So let me talk a little bit about my last category, and that is using shrubs as ground cover. So voila. I tried growing vinca minor and golden moneywort and all sorts of other things in front of my 100-year-old oak tree for years, and I never could get it established, probably because there was just too much competition from the tree itself. I just couldn't ever get a really homogeneous, filled in, good spread, good carpet of ground cover. So I decided to just use something that was mindlessly easy to grow and still beautiful, and that is this just dwarf Nandina. I planted them densely. They filled this space beautifully. They look great in the winter time. They're practically fuss-free. They don't require a lot of water. I periodically, if they get a little bit lanky, all I have to do is just break off a piece, and they will put out new growth at the point of either pruning or breaking it. I can prune it pretty much any time of year at any point along the cane, including cutting it all the way back to the ground, and it will come out just beautifully. So in terms of a really easy care shrub as a ground cover, I highly recommend using this Nandina. I also love Flirt, the tiny little finely bladed Nandina from the Southern Living Plant Collection. But for me, when nothing else would grow, this made a brilliant backdrop. It's handsome in and of itself, but as a foil upon which all of the other things that bloom in front of it can play, it's exceptional. So those are my 5 favorite ground cover solutions for my garden, and you might want to try giving them a try in your own gardens. By the way, if you have some that are just spectacular that I didn't mention, by all means, place the comment below so others can read them and try to share your suggestions in their gardens.